Welcome back to the show, everyone. This episode of our podcast is brought to you by Affinity Apartment Communities. That's right. Affinity Apartment Communities is offering comfortable living to anyone in Central Ohio. Check them out, AffinityApartmentCommunities.com. Fill out your application and get living comfortably tomorrow. Probably not tomorrow, but really as soon as you can, check out this website and fill out your application so you can get living comfortably soon. They'll go through the application process with you. They'll get you settled in. Also, a part of Affinity Apartment Communities are the Agape Ridge Cabins. The Agape Ridge Cabins are these beautiful cabins out in Hocking Hills. They have hot tubs. They make it feel like home for a week, but also they have beautiful views in Hocking Hills, Ohio, the beautiful mountains of Hocking Hills. Check out the agaperidgecabins.com. Check availability. They're filling up quick, so check them out, agaperidgecabins.com, and fill out an application to stay in those beautiful cabins. Also, check out My Auto Care. My Auto Care is next level, folks. They are next level auto repair company. They come to you. That's right. They come to you 24/7. They will come to you and fix up your car, whether it be brakes, an oil change, whatever it may be, whatever you have going on. If your engine light, your check engine light is on in your car, go to myautocare.com today. Let's get to it.
Could be up to the offensive line. No, Prince's going to throw for it. Got to get it off. They go for the ball game. Touchdown! Touchdown! Michael Jenkins! Holy Buckeye! Tebow straight ahead into the end zone, and the Gators have put this one on ice.
Hello, and welcome to the Tim and Shipe Show. This is a college football podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We're part of the Press Play Podcast Network, and what Tim and I are going to be doing for the next 45 minutes to an hour, so hang in there with us. We are going to be talking about college football. Tim Jones is a dirty Florida Gator fan in the swamps of Florida, and he loves the SEC and everything about it, and I am a Ohio State fan and a Big Ten football fan. And so we're going to get the Big Ten versus the SEC, the two best conferences in the world right now. We're going to be talking about them extensively and what it looks like to be in their conferences and everything college football for the next hour. So thank you so much for being a part of it. And Tim, let's talk about the Florida Gators and what are your thoughts on how they played last week?
All right, so Florida was okay. They played Missouri, and Missouri is not a very good team. The biggest thing with this game was there were a lot of people predicting an upset potentially, and a lot of it has to do with the weather and traveling to Missouri, and it was cooler, not cold, but it was cooler. So, really the bottom line was Florida went to Missouri, and they took care of business. Their defense was absolutely dominant.
Yeah.
Florida's defense just dominated Missouri's offense. And, Kelly Bryant, that was a big thing this offseason was like, where is he going to go? Like everybody in the country wanted him. Not everybody, but almost everybody in the country was recruiting him when he went to the transfer portal from Clemson. And, he had to go to Missouri, and people were saying like, this is it. This puts them this is a chance for them to be the top of the SEC this year. And it just hasn't happened, and
factor, man. I mean, he's
not
a difference maker.
But he's a true dual threat quarterback. He's a challenging, position player for Missouri, and Florida game planned him perfectly. And, they're just like overall, like their offense struggled at times. Missouri's defense is actually the number one pass defense in the conference this year.
Yeah. And
so it's been kind of overlooked because their season has been rough. But for a team like Florida who does not run the ball very well this season, they did a lot. So it was very effective overall. And Florida, Kyle Trask played well. He had almost 300 yards passing, so not as impressive as he's been in other games, but he did enough considering their backup quarterback was their leading rusher in the game. That is a lot. I mean, it was just, again, one-dimensional. It's been an issue for Florida all season. It's continuing to be an issue. But
what's going on? Is it the offensive line not rush blocking? Because, it doesn't seem like Trask is always under pressure.
They're not trying.
The offensive line isn't?
No, to run the ball. They're not even – they're barely ever – they're very few carries. So it's just not something –
P. Ryan?
Apparently not. Like, honestly, that's a crazy thing is they had a total of 9 carries for their three running backs on their team, And then they had like the trick plays with Kadarius Toney doing like the, double handoff type plays, like that kind of thing. He had 3 carries too. So a total between the 4 of them is still only 12 carries total for the game. They're just not even trying. So P. Ryan, for his 4 carries, he had 16 yards. So he averaged 4 yards a carry. They just weren't trying to. Wow. They just don't run the ball this season. And I'm not sure exactly what the purpose is for that.
Wow. That puts a lot of pressure on Trask as a quarterback. Man, that would put a lot of pressure on him.
What's impressive is he's one of the top 3 ranked quarterbacks in the conference.
Yeah.
Statistically, and all the major statistics. So he's done really well with handling that. So they pretty much have just gone to him, and it's a lot to expect, especially against, like I said, the number 1 pass defense in the conference. And he was ready for the moment. He played well, and they did enough to win the game. So no complaints. And now we're just looking forward to we have a week off this week, and then we play Florida State next week. And Florida State's had their struggles. They had their interim coach trying to do the best he can. They played better the last couple of weeks. They also had a nobody opponent this week. So they also have a week off before we play each other. So it'll be interesting to see. That's the next, just because of the competition level is lower, but it's a rivalry, so the emotional level is going to be high.
Yeah. I will say I watched quite a bit of the Florida game over the weekend because I was kind of leaning towards an upset. Like you said, I thought Missouri may have had the team to upset Florida, but hey, credit to Florida. They looked good beating Missouri. My brain's blanking today. Clemson's quarterback. Help me. I'm struggling. Kyle? Missouri's quarterback. Old Clemson.
Kelly Bryant.
Oh, gosh, I can't think today. Yeah, Kelly Bryant. He was not comfortable. Florida kept the pressure on, and their defense, man, they got some hog mollies, as I've heard it called. Hog mollies. Yeah, so that was a fun game to watch, and I honestly changed it because Missouri couldn't do anything against the Florida defense, and it got kind of boring, if I'm going to be honest. So,
no, all game long. I mean, in the last 2 games, they've given up 6 points total.
It's impressive. That's impressive. Good for Florida.
Their defense has really stepped up all season.
Yeah, that's awesome. Really good for Florida. Looking at Ohio State this last week, man, it took me a little bit after the game to kind of wrap my head around what just happened. You gave up 21 points to Rutgers when I think in the last 3 games, opponents gave up 24 points total, and Ohio State gave up 21. And so I was like, what in the world is going on? And then I realized first teamers were in the first half of the game, and they gave up 7 points, and that was only because of a muff punt. And then it went to the second team, and the second team played the entire second half. So I think all 86 players got on the field against Rutgers. It was let's try these different scenarios out. It was a glorified scrimmage. And honestly, when you go up 14-0 in the first 2 minutes of the game, I think it's only human nature too to just kind of okay, we just kind of coast a little bit. So I'm not going to take a whole lot away from this game. I know what this team is. Tim thinks he knows what this team is. So I'm not going to get overly worried about what happened. I'm just glad to be done. Whoever put the schedule together, I think I heard Ryan Day say they're all computer generated. You just get the teams and you plug them and they go. But man, when you have a bye week, Maryland and then Rutgers, that is a dull 3-week stretch. It was just dull.
Yeah, and from my perspective at least, it seems like it makes it challenging to peak at the right time when you have this kind of schedule and then you end with the 2 toughest teams you've played all year.
Yeah, the nice part is I think the saving grace here is Chase Young coming back, and they're all going to be juiced to have Chase Young back. So I think, honestly, that's going to be what motivates this team. And I don't know if the team really needs motivation. Penn State always brings it against Ohio State. The last 2 years, we've won by a total of 2 points in 2 years combined. So this Penn State comes in with confidence, knowing that they can hang with us, and they have in the past. And so it's just going to be a different game. I think when you have the Maryland, Rutgers, Indianas of the world come into Ohio State, there's probably a little bit of an intimidation factor. But Penn State has beat us before, and they've played us close, and they probably think they should have won the last 2 years. So it's we've had to have comeback wins the past 2 years, and we only won by 1 point each season. So Penn State is always plays tough, and so I'm finally looking forward to a weekend of watching college football.
Yeah, and speaking of the NCAA and making money, do you think it's a coincidence that Chase Young is back for this game?
What do you mean a coincidence?
After the appeal, that they made it a 2 game instead of 4 games, so he came back for Penn State and Michigan. You think it's a coincidence with the NCAA?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a stretch that he should have even been out any games. I think we've even talked like what a
Come on.
rule. You think he should have been out more than 2 games?
No, I'm saying we knew he was going to miss games because it's a stupid rule, of course, but it's still it's a rule. I mean, it's
I think the same thing happened to a different player, and they got 1 game. I don't think they penalize this very much, especially when they have proof that he paid the money back and all that kind of stuff. So
I think the difference was it was a self-reporting versus somebody else telling on them situation, 1 versus 2 games.
Yeah. So I wasn't surprised by the 2 games. I hear a lot of people. I heard a lot of people, especially in Tim's neck of the woods in SEC country, talking about the coincidence that that he's out the 2 weakest games of the schedule, and then he comes back for the 2 toughest games of the schedule. But I don't think that it. I don't know. I think it was silly for him to be out at all.
Well, of course you're saying that. You're a Buckeye fan, so
but you would think it too if it was a Florida person.
No, I would say it's a stupid rule. I would say it's absolutely a stupid rule, but I also would say, like, you just have to know. Like, it's the thing is, it's frustrating with the NCAA, but you have to know the rules. You have to know what you can and can't do, and then work inside of that. Like, I'm not saying it's okay. Like, it's very frustrating, and I get that. But I also would be like, well, it's like, I just lost his name. The quarterback who played for Florida, and then he went to West Virginia. And, he took a supplement he wasn't supposed to, and he was, like, absolutely dominating at Florida, and he was suspended the second half of the season. And so he ended up going to West Virginia. He's in the NFL now. And it was just one of those things. Like, it's very disappointing, very frustrating, but it's also like, well, you have to know what you can and can't take. You have to know what you can and can't do because there's so many ridiculous rules in the NCAA. But it was never like, I was never mad at the NCAA. I was just frustrated by the concepts.
Yeah. And I mean, let's be real. Chase Young, and I heard this on ESPN, so credit to, I can't remember who it was, but they said Chase Young got a penalty. This came down on Chase Young because he has no money. If it was somebody whose parents could have gave him money to send his girlfriend to the game, then this never was an issue. So the fact that he had to borrow the money from somebody is the only reason that this is even an issue. So I think it's ridiculous. And in 2 years, this will be a moot point where they can make money on whatever they want, and they don't have to even worry about it. So can't wait for that to happen. And no, I don't think it's a coincidence. I think that it was just how it was. I think if any player in any world and any team did the same thing, they would have got the same penalty.
Okay.
Do you disagree?
I mean, I just think it's convenient that he's coming back at this time.
It's convenient for Ohio State for sure, but I don't think it's
the NCAA just for ratings purposes.
Maybe. I mean, I'm not going to argue that the NCAA doesn't have cash motivations. That's the only thing they're motivated by. But
Will Grier, by the way, is the player I was talking about.
Oh, yeah. I remember him.
Yeah.
All right. So looking forward to this week. Well, I'll give the score prediction when we do our picks against the spread coming up in just a couple segments. So let's talk about the top 4, 5, top 10 teams from the playoff committee that came out just right before we started recording. They have, I'm sure you've probably already seen it. LSU 1, Ohio State 2, Clemson 3, Georgia 4, and Bama 5. No change in the top 5, Tim.
Yeah, no surprises there. I think that based on the results of this past weekend, that doesn't surprise me at all. Like, I don't think any of those teams necessarily deserved to change. Do you agree or disagree?
I don't know. And this is me just wanting Ohio State to be number 1, but I think LSU gave up a lot of yards, a lot of yards this past weekend. 400. They gave up 400 rushing yards. Did I see that right? They gave up 400 rushing yards, 40 points. Like they did not play necessarily well last week. And so I was hoping that maybe Ohio State would jump them. But with Ohio State only playing Maryland, I mean, I can see why they didn't. So, yeah, Ohio State
I
gave
mean,
up
keep in mind
37
though.
points to Ole Miss. And
Keep in mind, it's the same situation as it's been all season, though, where they allowed 7 points in the first half. Same thing you just said for Ohio State
yeah,
happened to LSU as well. So they were dominating. They scored 58. They allowed 7 points in the first half. All the rest of the points were in the second half.
that's true. That's true. I'm looking at that too. Yeah.
So I think you got to keep that in consideration as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Ohio State plays LSU tomorrow, Tim. Who wins?
Honestly, I have no idea.
Really?
I really don't know. I think offensively, these teams are pretty comparable. I think Joe Burrow's a better quarterback, more experienced.
Okay.
So I think that basically balances out the two defenses. I think Ohio State's defense is better, but I think that the experience of Joe Burrow kind of balances out the difference at this point. So I think it's a coin flip for me.
Okay. But is that the game you want to see in the championship? If Florida can't be in it, do you want to see an LSU Ohio State championship game?
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
I would love it. I think the storyline is there. The Joe Burrow transfer from Ohio State to LSU. I think I would really like to see, and you and I talked about this pregame, but to see Ohio State jump to number 1 and play Georgia first round. So you got the Ohio State with Justin Fields and Georgia game where Justin Fields goes head to head. And then if LSU drops to 2 and plays Clemson, you have the potential for the Ohio State Clemson where Joe Burrow came from. Like, I think that plays out perfect as far as like writing a movie for this or writing a TV show. I think that would play out perfect and just be really fun to watch. But chances of that happening are not good. And why is that? Georgia's going to lose to who?
Georgia will lose to LSU in the conference
LSU,
championship,
yeah.
and then it's setting up for Oregon to play against Utah in their conference championship with one loss conference champion. I think we'll have a way better shot than Alabama or Georgia with 2 losses at that point. So that's pretty much where it'll stand probably. Okay.
So it's all going to come down to, all right, let's play out the hypothetical game, what we think should happen. If everyone plays the way they should, we'll have LSU, Ohio State, Clemson undefeated. So then it's going to come down to the best one-loss team. And those could potentially be Alabama, could potentially be Utah,
or Oregon.
Utah or Oregon, right? Those would be the 3, Bama, Utah, or Oregon. Those are the only 3 with the potential of having only 1 loss.
As things should play out, yes.
Okay. Like in our perfect world. And so we think Utah's out. Just lack of brand? Is that why you would put Utah out?
No, I'm saying for the committee. I'm not saying for talent or anything like that. I think the committee, Utah would be a nightmare consideration. Just because, because of the following and the popularity. I think Alabama has more popularity. I think Oregon with Nike, they have a lot of popularity. So I think, for brand purposes, the committee does not want Utah to be in the top 4.
Right. So we'll cut Utah. For the same reason why, well, maybe not the same reason, but it's similar to why TCU and Baylor were out the first year in 2014. Just that the brand isn't there, the following's not there. It's much easier to put in an Oregon or an Alabama. So between Oregon and Alabama, who gets the nod?
I think they would give it to Oregon if they play Utah in the conference championship and win.
What if Bama dominates these next 2 weeks? And
I think it's that off week, which I want to say that, but then you never know because Notre Dame got in regardless.
Right.
When a lot of people didn't think they should have. Mm-hmm. But I think just based on the Tua injury, I think that's going to knock Alabama's chances out.
Yeah. If Alabama does what Ohio State did in 2014, and I know they're not going to get a chance at the conference championship if LSU wins out, but if they beat the brakes off of Auburn, just totally smokes them, I think then they're back in.
Yeah, there's a possibility if they absolutely just destroy Auburn and let's say Utah beats Oregon by a field goal.
Yeah,
that's a possibility at that point. But I think they're going to give Oregon the nod over Alabama no matter
regardless, even if they. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I want so bad for Ohio State to play 2 SEC teams in the playoffs so bad, and I want them to just destroy both of them. That's my dream. that they play 2 SEC teams, first round Bama, second round LSU, and they just dominate. And that's partially because I'm listening to Paul Feinbaum and them talk about how great the SEC is. And the reason why Ohio State's undefeated is because they don't play any SEC teams. And they keep man, this show gets me fired up. I listen to it every day now. And it just gets me fired up because they say they talk about how when the SEC plays anyone out of conference, they always win. And they point to teams like Notre Dame and Texas, and who else was the big non-conference win?
Oregon,
yeah, Auburn and Oregon. When you and I both know Texas is an above-average team, Notre Dame is an average team, and Oregon is really the only good quality win. And Oregon was just trying really hard to give that game to Auburn first week of the season. I mean, they went up big, and then they let Auburn come back.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but I guess let's go to the same conversation in the Big Ten. What non-conference games in the Big Ten have played out?
I don't know. I'd have to look. For some reason, I don't listen to as much Big Ten stuff as I do SEC stuff these days.
That's because you're obsessed. You're obsessed with the SEC. No, but here's the thing. Here's the thing about Paul Feinbaum. He's found his niche of listening to crazy redneck SEC fans.
Yes.
That's not, if we're being honest and we're being real, that's not the majority of SEC fans. That is the people that I feel like it's almost like a Jerry Springer type publicity.
You're probably right. Yeah.
So just to be fair.
Yeah, because that's all it is. It's it makes the South look really bad listening to Paul Feinbaum's show. And you're just these people are really slow.
They're all from Alabama. That's every single person who calls them and lives in Alabama. I promise you.
And Georgia, Alabama, and Georgia. Those are the majority. I
mean, they might say they're from Georgia, but they're from Eastern Alabama. I promise you. These weirdos.
All right. So that's our top 5, top 4. Those are what we're looking at. I think we have a potential for Penn State, as obviously they're ranked at number 8. So that's going to be a top 10 win for Ohio State. And I think there's real potential for Michigan to climbing to that number 10 spot. And so this would give Ohio State 2 top 10 back-to-back wins if we can get it, and real potential to jump to that number 1 spot with quality wins over 2 top 10 teams. And I really want Ohio State in that number 1 spot because I don't want to play Clemson. I was talking to Tim about this before the show. I don't think anybody wants to play Clemson in the first round because they are coming fired up and they're coming rested because they have not played a game all season. So their starters, just like Ohio State at this point, probably their starters are well rested.
Yeah, and when they're peaking at the right time, they struggle early in the season, and they're doing exactly what you want a team to do, where they're coming together and they're playing well now, getting ready for their conference championship and the playoff. Right.
The committee not putting them at number 1 was the best thing that could have happened, and Dabo Swinney's eating it up, and they're peaking, like you said. Right now, they are peaking, and they're looking really good. Now, granted, it is against subpar ACC teams.
Yeah,
but I think they've won each game. It was they have had a 50-3 score for the past 3 weeks. They are consistent. And
but having lived in South Carolina, this is what Dabo does. This is what he's so good at, is getting his team to peak at the right time, which is one of the biggest challenges for college athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And Dabo has done this year in and year out. This is what he is so good at doing.
Yeah. So I do not want to play Clemson first round. So we need Ohio State. I don't know if we need. I'm not scared of any team because I think Ohio State's just that good. But who would you rather play first round, Clemson or Utah or Oregon?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. No question.
Yeah. So next week I see the top 10 after Bama starting at 6. I see Utah, Minnesota, Florida, Wisconsin, Michigan. We'll see how it turns out, with Michigan getting their way to be a top 10 team by the last week of the season.
Yeah, so make sure do you mind just discussing really quick the teams that you see losing this week then?
We have those in our picks, but all right.
Okay. Well, we won't talk about it now then.
That's all right. No. You're going to steal it from me. You have number 6. You have Oregon playing Arizona State. That's a real trap game. Real potential, I think, for Arizona State. they're always that sneaky trap team, similar to Iowa in the Big Ten, similar to who else would you compare them to as being that sneaky team who you can never count out?
TCU this year has done that a couple
TCU,
times.
Yep. And so I think Oregon, pay attention to the Oregon-Arizona State game. Pay attention to even Utah at Arizona. I think it's at Arizona, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Right.
that's a real potential upset there. And then obviously, if I think Ohio State's going to be at 2, I see Penn State losing to Ohio State, dropping out of the top 10. And then, like we said, TCU could be competition for Oklahoma. So I see at least 2 of those teams losing, maybe 3, putting Michigan in the top 10.
Okay. I like it.
You like it?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Everyone else has got a cake game this week. Ohio State, Penn State, the only ranked game with 2 ranked teams this week.
The only game this week with 2 ranked teams is crazy.
Yeah, and so you have ESPN Game Day is going to be in Columbus. The Big Ten Big Noon kickoff is going to be in Columbus, and you have the Big Ten Network that's going to be in Columbus, all on Saturday. So it's going to be busy in Columbus. If you're not going to the game, stay away because you're not going to drive anywhere. It's going to be traffic. It's going to be backed up. And hopefully everyone floods the Fox, the Big Noon kickoff, the Fox stage, and they boycott College Game Day. That's what I'm saying. Do it.
One of these 2 is way more popular than the other, but I'm not going to say which is which.
For now.
Everybody knows.
Fox is making a brand for themselves, especially in
saying that for 10 years.
No, Fox is making a brand for themselves in college football. Urban Meyer, Gus, and Joel are national treasures. Gotta love the way Gus Johnson calls the games.
Well, Urban will be on the field next year, so I wouldn't count him too much.
Right. He's going to be USC. Is that what we're still saying?
Or Notre Dame. I hear a lot of rumors. Apparently, Florida State wants Brian Kelly really bad, too. So.
Really?
Yeah.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Don't do it, Brian Kelly.
Yeah,
I wouldn't if I were you. I mean, I'm not
either.
Yeah. All right. So give us our picks against the spread. What happened last week? What's happening this week, Tim?
All right. So last week, coming in, I was up 6-3.
Yeah.
We had 5 games, I believe, last week, right?
Yeah.
So yes, and a chance for you to tie. That was the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So the first game we had was Florida at Missouri. We both picked Missouri to cover because I was concerned about the rumor, the fear of upset.
Right.
So I still thought Florida was going to win, but I thought it'd be closer than 7. And Florida just dominated.
Looked good.
We both missed that one. The next one is we both picked OSU to cover against Rutgers plus 53 for Rutgers, and Ohio State didn't cover it on that one.
They didn't. First game, second game all season, week 1, and then this one. Second time they didn't cover.
But what we didn't talk about, and we should have thought about this last week, was the fact that we knew they weren't going to play their starters the whole game.
Right.
That was the difference.
They played 1 series in the third quarter, and that was it.
Yep.
What we were thinking.
I know. And then we had the Georgia-Auburn game. Georgia was favored by 2.5. I picked Georgia. You took Auburn. Georgia won that one.
Yeah.
Georgia covered that for me. And then we had Minnesota at Iowa. You took Minnesota. I took Iowa. I was favored by 2.5, and Iowa won that one.
Yeah.
So I covered there. And then the last game was Oklahoma at Baylor. Oklahoma favored by 10. Obviously, Oklahoma won, but Baylor covered.
All right.
So I went up 1 more. So now I am up 7-3 coming into this week. So you have some work to do.
No, you're up 8-4, aren't you? You got 2. It was 6-3 coming in, right?
Yeah, we only add the difference.
All right.
Because I was up. It was 2-1, so it went from 6-3 to 7-3.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We just had the difference of the total.
That makes sense. I like it. All right.
We've been doing all year.
Sounds better. Yeah.
So it's 7-3 coming into this week. We have 3 games this week. 2 of them are a little bit snoozers, but more upset alert situations like we talked about. So we have the Oregon at Arizona State. Arizona State is being given 14.5
Ooh.
at home against Oregon.
Well, you know who I'm going with here. I'm calling potential upset, so I'm going Arizona State.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I don't think Arizona State is going to win this game,
Yeah.
but I think it's going to be like a field goal possession type game.
Mm-hmm.
So that's way too many points on the road for
Mm-hmm.
Oregon to be given. That's too much.
Yep, I'm with you. I'm calling for the upset.
Okay,
I
I
think
like it. I mean, I
Yeah.
wouldn't be shocked if Oregon lost this game. I'm just going to say they're going to win. They're going to pull it off against a 5-5 Arizona State team, but it's going to be way close. 14.5 is a lot of points.
Yeah, I agree.
So the next one is, and this is one that I told you, I didn't tell you what the spread was, but I told you it's the weirdest spread I've seen in a long time. TCU going to Oklahoma. Oklahoma is favored by 19 points. 19. And I'll tell you straight up, I'm taking TCU to cover 19 points. It's such a random number. Like, I don't know where do you get 19?
I don't know. So you're going with you're picking TCU here?
Yeah.
I am as well. I think TCU could win. I don't think Oklahoma might be good. I don't know. Is Baylor good? Baylor should have won that game. Here's what I think. Let's talk about this because I think Tua being injured really kind of overshadowed what happened in this Oklahoma game.
Sure.
Because
Baylor was dominating.
I looked at the Baylor score. I was like, I got that game easy.
Yeah.
You know, I picked Baylor. I looked at it as like, what is it, 30-3 or something like that? And then they couldn't do anything in the second half. And so here's what happens when you go brand school against a non-brand school, where the non-brand school, if they have good coaching, they can get their first teamers to play really well. The problem is that Oklahoma has depth and they will wear you out. And so where Baylor plays fast and hard for one half against these really good teams, they lose all their juice in the second half. And then you got the Oklahomas of the world taking over. So
with that, and I think the difference is the head coaches. I think that Oklahoma made adjustments and Baylor didn't know how to counter it.
Right.
So they kept doing the exact same thing in the second half.
Yeah.
So I think both, but I agree with what you're saying too. I think the depth made a huge difference, especially getting into the fourth quarter. I mean, Oklahoma just wore them down.
Yeah, you knew once that game got within 7, it was over. That Oklahoma was finishing this, and it was over. Like, there's nothing that Baylor could have done.
Yeah. So we're both taking TCU to cover those 19 points against Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's a lot of points. It's a lot of points.
Yeah.
So I'm with you there. And then the last game, and the kind of marquee game that we talked about, is Penn State at Ohio State. Ohio State is favored by 17.5.
I'm going Ohio State on this one.
Seriously?
Mm-hmm.
Me too.
I think Ohio State by 21.
Yeah, I just don't. I've told you pretty much all year I don't have a lot of faith in Penn State. You know, I just don't. I don't see how their quarterback is going to beat Ohio State. He's okay.
Yeah,
but it's not good.
What gives me pause a little bit is that the Rutgers, and again, this could be just Ohio State slacking off after they went up big early. But on a lot of those read options, they caught Ohio State napping, and their quarterback was able to run for 10 or 12 yards sometimes. And Penn State's quarterback, he's much faster. He has a better offensive line, and so he could gash us for some yards. I could see us giving up some running yards. I know I've said Ohio State has no weakness, which I don't think. I haven't seen it yet, but if I'm going to say they have any weakness, it's going to be their run defense. That is, I wouldn't call it necessarily a weakness at this point, but that's where they're the weakest, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
I just don't see it. I think what Ohio State's waiting to see is a really good defense. I don't think they've played against a really good defense yet with your young quarterback. Yeah. And I don't see that from Penn State this week either.
I think Penn State has a good defense.
They're good, but they're not elite. They're not as good as, some other teams in the country. So I think we'll see more. Like, honestly, I'd like to see a matchup against Clemson. Clemson's defense is not as good as they were last year, but they're good. Yeah. So that'd be a fun matchup.
Yeah. And that's the thing about Ohio State is their season, they have 5 really good teams coming up ahead of them. It's a 5-game season right now where they have Penn State, Michigan, Big Ten championship game, and then 2 college football playoff games. Like they have this is where their season is really getting started, and they're really getting into the meat of it if they do what they should do.
Yeah. Well, would you agree that their best hopes right now is they're cheering for Minnesota to win out, so they don't have to play Wisconsin a second time?
Yeah, I don't think that – I'm not scared of Wisconsin, but who wants to play that? It doesn't help their schedule, and I just don't want to see it. I want to see somebody new like Minnesota. I just don't want to see that game over again. Like I just don't want it. Not that I'm worried they're going to lose if they play them again or anything like that. It's just ugh. Who wants to play Wisconsin two
exactly
in one season? Ugh.
Yep.
Terrible.
Especially after the first game, that was ugly.
Yeah, I mean, we smoked them, and I don't think Wisconsin's gotten any better. They don't seem to be, improving. Like I think Michigan's improving. I think Minnesota's improving. I think Indiana's improving, but Wisconsin, they're not. They're stagnant.
Yeah.
All right, Tim. Final thoughts, my friend. Or do you want me to start off final thoughts?
It doesn't matter. I can start.
All right, give it to us.
All right. So my final thoughts for tonight are basically just talking about the Tua injury, which we briefly kind of mentioned. We haven't gotten a lot into, but basically, he's out for the year, potentially 6 months after that, recovering from this hip surgery he had today. And really what I want to talk about is the concept. We see a lot in the NBA, but the NBA is a different type of sport, and it's a whole tanking situation. So there are several teams this year who they're talking about tanking in order to get a better draft pick in the next draft. And so I think that the Tua injury really shows us why you can do it in basketball, you can't do it in football.
Right.
Because the risk is so high for these players to potentially be injured, especially this type of player. And I think you'll see the next year the same thing with, Clemson's quarterback. There's several quarterbacks who are more dual threat type who are coming up in the next year or two, and I think you're going to see quarterback or teams who are saying, well, I could use that kind of quarterback, but it's also just football is such a strange game, and it's so physical, and the careers are so potentially limiting that it doesn't work in football like it does for basketball. And I think that the Dolphins, the Bengals, maybe not so much the Redskins, but who knows at this point with that's a terrible team, terribly run team.
Yeah.
So I think it just shows the consequences, though, of trying to tank for, especially, like the Dolphins living in Florida. I hear all the time. I've heard all season how the Dolphins were tanking for Tua.
Yeah.
And, it's like, now it's probably second guessing that a little bit at this point.
Yeah. Well,
the Bengals have Joe Burrow at this point. So
yeah, Joe Burrow or Chase Young. I mean, those still aren't bad first picks.
No, but I'm saying if your point is trying to tank for one specific player,
right?
In the NFL, it doesn't work. It's not a good game plan.
Yeah. Let's talk about that Tua situation for a second, because it's how heartbreaking, for Tua and his family and the fans of Alabama, I guess, because it's terrible. You never want to see anything like this, and a lot of people have questioned whether or not he should have still been playing in the game, whether or not why was he cleared? Because as of, I think, Thursday, he was not cleared to play. And then Saturday, he's on the field playing. And so why was he playing? You could tell that, when he's running from linemen, typically he gets out of those. He was running from those linemen, and they brought him down and, destroyed his hip. So why on earth was he playing in that situation? And they said, he wanted to play. His family wanted him to play. And so Saban played him, and he was in 2-minute drill, whatever. But when you're looking big picture, Tim, and I heard Colin Cowherd bring up this point today. When you're looking big picture, was this injury for Tua potentially the best thing that ever happened to him? Now, I know he could lose like $25 million from like the first pick down to like the 17th pick. But when you're thinking long term, would you rather be drafted by somebody like the Bengals or the Dolphins, or fall in the draft and get drafted by somebody like the Steelers, where you could have a much better long-term career?
Well, I think every player is thinking, I can be the difference maker for this team. So I don't think Tua is thinking, thank God I got hurt because now I'm dropping 20 places. But realistically, looking at it from our perspective, I think it's not going to hurt for that, other than his paycheck. Potentially his next big paycheck could be that much bigger because of doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at players like Lamar Jackson, I think if he gets drafted by the Dolphins, for example,
Right.
I think that's a different situation for him.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there are certain there are certain quarterbacks, doesn't matter where you get drafted, the Peyton Mannings, those type of
Right.
players that no matter where they get drafted, they're just that talented. They're going to be good quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But then there are players that you have to be in the right system and the right situation for it to be effective, for you to be to reach your potential.
Yeah.
And so I think Tua, I put him in the same. I think he's a more talented quarterback than Lamar Jackson at this point,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not 100% sure. So it's hard to say.
When Tua throws the ball, it is just so crisp and so clean, and it seems like it goes in with so much authority. You know what? Does that make sense? When I say when he throws the ball, it just looks so smooth and just on the money. Like it. I think he very well, if he, from what I've heard, the reports are that the surgery went well. It's maybe like a 1.5 year rehab, but from what I heard, he should recover. And I think, if you go to somewhere like the Steelers, sit behind Big Ben, if Big Ben comes back for a year, rehab, and then you go to play, I think that's honestly his best case scenario at this point.
Yeah, and that's probably what's going to end up happening, somewhere along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you always have to consider those teams who are willing to move up and take those chances.
Take that.
Or even teams who are in the middle of the pack.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the team who you wouldn't expect, who hasn't had the best luck with quarterbacks, who are saying, you know what, let's take our chance.
Yeah,
let's go with this. Maybe somebody who has a quarterback now and is saying, we know it's going to take some time. Look at the Saints, for example. They're saying, well, Drew Brees has how much time left? Right. Teddy Bridgewater is a decent backup, but is he going to be a starter for us?
Right.
Why not move up 5 spots and take your chances with this guy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that. So that it's so unfortunate. Like, gosh, for this to happen, you never want to see it, but it could end up working out really well for him long term.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So my final thoughts: ESPN versus Fox at Ohio State. I've already said I hope that Ohio State fans boycott ESPN just because I think it'd be really funny, and everyone goes to the Fox where Fox is real big at supporting the Big Ten right now because they're in partnership with the Big Ten Network. So I really like the idea of everyone doing that. So, and the ESPN is pushing the SEC agenda. So Ohio State, go out to Fox News, go out to the Fox booth, show your support, show your love for Urban Meyer, turn out and have the best signs in the world. Tim, is there any ESPN SEC bias as you see it?
I think there is no more SEC bias than there is Fox with Big Ten.
So I've already admitted that there's probably a Big Ten Fox bias.
Yeah, I mean, there is some. There is some because obviously the ESPN does telecast some of the SEC games.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is potentially some there, yes.
Okay.
Yes. But I think it also is a combination of that and the general SEC domination over the past decade plus.
Give me a break.
That's a fact.
It's not a fact.
Half of the national championships were the SEC versus all the other conferences. That is a fact.
Majority of them Alabama. So I'll give you maybe an Alabama dominance, but not SEC.
Okay. Over the last 15 years, the SEC has won 8 national championships, I believe, if not more.
Let's go back just since the birth of the playoffs. Why are we like 15 years? How that's a long time to try to paint.
I'm looking at big picture. I'm just trying to give you like a template. I mean, yeah, 4 years is fine, but typically you're like, well, it's only talking about 4 years.
The majority of them have been Alabama, correct? What is it? 5 out of the 8 have been Alabama. I think you had LSU and 2 Floridas.
Okay.
So 5 of the 8 were Alabama. So you could say Alabama dominance. But I don't think you can.
Okay, but who does Alabama play for? Okay, outside of Ohio State, who in the Big Ten has done anything?
No one. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Like there hasn't been like when you look at, there have been dominant teams. I don't think you can say dominant conferences.
Let's be honest. It's been Alabama and Clemson, period, in the past
5
decade,
years.
if you want to do it that way.
Well, I think since the inception of the college football playoffs, you had Ohio State and then Alabama and Clemson split 2-2 for each. And then if Ohio State wins,
well, my point is,
it's 3 dominant teams in college football if Ohio State wins it this year.
Okay, well,
not 3 dominant conferences. I don't think you can argue conferences, Tim, when it's just the teams who are dominant.
Okay, but that's not true though, because Georgia lost to Alabama in the national championship.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like it's just been Alabama. There have been other SEC teams who are in the conversation as well. It's just Alabama has been the most dominant team in the SEC. You can't even have that conversation in the ACC.
Who did Georgia play that year?
Alabama.
Like in the first round, though. In the first round of the playoffs. Not
Notre Dame, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. So.
But it's not the point. Like, it doesn't matter. It's not the opponent. It's the fact that they got there.
I understand.
Really?
But my point is they shouldn't have been there in the first place. Like,
and Oregon shouldn't have been there against Ohio State, but they got there. So, like, Oregon wasn't in my opinion, Oregon wasn't the best 2 or 3 teams in the country that year.
Boy, a lot of people were number 1, I think, in the country. They were the number 1 team in the country. So it's hard to say they shouldn't have been in the playoffs that year, Tim. They were the number 1 team in the country that year. I think Ohio State beat them by the same margin they beat Bama. Beat Bama that year? No, maybe by a little bit more, but it wasn't that much.
I honestly don't remember. Yeah, my point is still, I think you're like downplaying because yes, Alabama has been dominant in general in college football, period.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like they just absolutely dominate the conference. I mean, you have to keep in mind they also lost to Auburn one year and still got in the playoff and dominated in the playoff. So, like there have been a lot of outliers to that conversation too. Whereas, yes, Alabama has been the most dominant team in college football, period. But it's not the same thing as like Clemson, who's dominated the ACC. No one else has been in the conversation except for Florida State. At one point was sort of in the conversation for a couple of years, but not significantly.
No, I think that the SEC gets a lot of credit because of ESPN and the different writers who still think that the SEC rules all when they don't. And that's why I really want to play 2 SEC teams in the national champion in the college football playoffs, just to show that they're all garbage.
You don't want that though, because what happened? What it would take for that to really happen is Alabama would get in, and then when they beat Alabama, it's going to be like, well, if Tua was playing.
Yeah, that's true. I want it to be Georgia. So I want maybe Georgia to beat LSU.
That's the only way
to still stay at 4.
That's the only way it would happen.
That's what I want to happen. Yeah. So rooting for Georgia.
All right.
All right. So those are my final thoughts. Go Big Ten Network. Go Fox Network, and down with ESPN. Final thoughts. And that is what we end you with this week. Tim, had a great show. We'll get thanks for being part of it, everyone. Thanks you to our sponsors. Thank you to everyone. Give us a like, follow, comment on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. And thanks so much for being part of the show. He's Tim Jones. I'm Aaron Shipe. Thank you so much for being part of it. We'll catch you next time.
And go Gators.